First, it's a pleasure to moderate this panel, how to build a solid talent strategy to attract key staff and top executives, with two great speakers here. Kristin Langdon. Kristin is the SVP of People and Culture of Spotify, and Yoann Bruguiere, Yoann.
Just Yoann.
Yes, Yoann, okay. Is CPA and also a founding partner at Orbis. I'm gonna give them the floor to present a little bit more themselves, and then we will start the panel. So Kristin, maybe first.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am Kristin Langdon. I am the SVP of People and Culture at Spotify. Spotify is an enterprise SaaS company that we help brands turn organic search into efficient, measurable, sustainable channels for traffic growth and revenue growth. We recently just closed our Series C round of funding, which is super exciting. And we've grown a lot this year, over 100 new Spotifyers. And we have plans to provide much more than that for 2022. So an exciting year ahead.
Thank you, Kristin. Yeah, it seems like a lot of talent searching challenges moving forward for you.
Absolutely.
So hi everyone, I'm Yoann. I'm the founding partner of Orbis. Orbis is a CPA firm where we help basically startups and middle-sized firms in the US scaling up easily. And mainly we are focused on international companies into the US. So I'm myself the tax partner within the Orbis community, and we help a lot international firms, setting up specifically stock option plans and all those equity incentive plans for international firms in the US and for their US workforce.
Great. So let's start our conversation now. The first question will be for Kristin. Kristin, it's an incredible to see the economy and the job market eating up when only a few months ago we were mired into misery. Is a war for talent starting?
I mean, absolutely. And it's absolutely true that here we were in a very different place 18 months ago, and we have picked up rapidly. And I think, recruiting has always been complex and nuanced, but post-pandemic, we've really had to rewrite so many of our talent acquisition plans and strategies. And so it's become very interesting.
Okay, so in this context, what are the talent management strategies that you are implementing at Spotify?
Absolutely. Considering we've had to rewrite all of our books, if you think about pre-pandemic, only 6% of companies were offering some sort of remote work. Fast forward to today, 40% of companies have some form of remote working policy. So we really had to change our talent acquisition and retention strategies to be able to accommodate this new sort of hybrid working style. So, that's one of the many ways we've had to change them. But, for us, we've tried to move forward with creating a flexible forward policy so that we can literally meet our current and future Spotifyers where they are. We've also had to lean into our employer brand a lot during this period. We view our employer brand as unlocking our employees' hidden potential and growth. So globally, our employee mindset has also shifted. So for us to be competitive in this market, for employees, we need to show them that we're willing to invest in them as much as they've invested in us. So globally, we've added many different things for personal and professional development to help our Spotifyers unlock their hidden potential and growth. One of those things is for their professional development is we offer one-to-one career coaching by a certified professional coach for every single one of our employees. And for personal development, things like volunteer time off, giving people the opportunity to give back in the communities where they are. So I think if we looked back 18 months ago, these things might not have been part of our strategy, but they're absolutely foundational to it now.
Okay, and Yoann, do you have anything to add on that, or do you want to comment anything on this?
Yeah, no, I think obviously, the work at home policy. I don't think it can be discussed today. So I think most of our clients, there's no discussion on implementing this type of policies. But I think what is interesting in what Kristin is saying is the coaching into personal, career path, and not just about career, but personal environment, how you feel, and volunteering and all those things. And I think that's really interesting because I think that's one of the things that COVID, we realized during COVID is that it's great to work from home, but working with coworkers through a screen, obviously, you get some frustrations and you don't have the social interactions. And so for your mental health and personal development, it's there is some downside. And I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about this, Kristin, but I think the personal coaching suggestion, I think it's a really good tool, and it's nice to see those things implemented, I think.
I kind of look at coaching as like instead not personal therapy, but it's professional therapy, right? And I think it helps our employees to see where they're going and have somebody that can help them look outside of the company and give them advice that's not based on what we'd like for them to do, but what they would like for them to do, because it's really about investing in them.
Yeah, that gives me an opportunity for next questions, because you manage actually people from different country at Bodify, because it's a global culture. So how do you actually manage this this global culture within the company? How do you attract and retain those talents? Is it the same way in the US or in Europe? Do you have a global or a regional strategies? Global regional strategies for talents?
Absolutely. I go back to employer brand here, right? So from a global perspective, that's really our overarching theme. Whether you're in France or London or Singapore or Tokyo or Australia or New York or Seattle, we want to unlock your hidden potential and growth. So our global strategy is around our employer brands, unlocking your hidden potential and growth. But to execute on that, we have to do that at a more local level. So while we offer great things like professional coaching for all of our employees globally in the language that they speak, we do things at a regional level with each of our offices as well, that's different to attract and retain talent. In the US, for instance, it's a wildly different retention and acquisition perspective than in Europe. So, when we're looking at the US, our compensation strategy has to be much different, just because the local compensation is so much more increased. Our US employees, or candidates rather, are looking for increased perks and unique benefits, and that's only increased post-pandemic at this point. So for instance, we offer things like a work from home stipend. It's not something we would have offered pre-pandemic. So it's really changed the way that it's become a recruiting tool for us in the US specifically, and far less in Europe, where our employees seem to want to return to the office more than they do for their US counterparts. So, in lieu of that, in our European offices, we offer much more localized things like, language classes. So we try to make things fair across the board, but make sure that they're getting things that are impactful for them, as opposed to trying to put a one size fits all onto everybody's employee experience.
And I think I can comment on the execution, because I think it's really important on the entrepreneur side of things. I see a lot of entrepreneurs coming from France and developing the businesses in the US, and at some point, they want to execute this, global employer brand strategies into the retention policies and recruitment policies. And most of the time, the execution needs to be local, because the rules are different and the culture is different as well. And sometimes you might think that, we're all coming from those Western countries, and so we have kind of like the same culture. But I think actually that's a big mistake. And I always tell entrepreneurs, when you come in the US, it's like, imagine it's like if you were going to China. You will not, try to develop the China market just from France, or with people from France moving locally. You need to have people that understand the market to execute your strategy into the local market, into the US. And so I always see, you know, like I talk to entrepreneurs a lot about this issue all the time. And they always tell me the day they started to really scale up and develop the business the way it should be, it's when they started hiring culture people and an executive into culture and HR management, someone like Kristin. And that's what makes usually the difference, you know, into the scale up of the company. And I think that's, you know, it's never too early to actually start thinking about, you know, hiring someone locally to start, you know, executing the overall strategy and the HR strategy.
Well, I appreciate you giving me that job security, Yoann, and I could not agree with you more. But to that point, I think it's, you know, it is true when you want a global presence, but, you know, attracting and retaining employees has become much more human-based as opposed to, you know, business-based. So we have to think about the employees that we're bringing in. And if I'm offering something to someone in France that the US team loves and it just doesn't mean anything to them, it's not a great employee experience. And so that doesn't help us to bring them into the company, and that doesn't help us keep them either. So, you know, it's great to have a global vision, but the way that you bring it to each of your employees in the different geographies is so important to keeping them.
Right, yeah, it's true. I also see that every day. But just if we focus on compensation and benefits, because those are very important, the package in the US, also in France, of course, but here, I know things have changed. We don't offer the same package than before. So what would you recommend for a company establishing in the US and scaling there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's wildly different, as we've said already, but in the US, you would have to expect to see much higher salary requirements, and you're going to see a lot of negotiating from the candidates that you're bringing in and from your current employees as well. It's a really strong atmosphere and culture of negotiation, and top talent will likely negotiate at least once in that offer process with you. And you're also going to see a lot of candidates expecting and negotiating around equity. Our candidates have become, and I will say, and this is in the last 5 years in my career, much more knowledgeable about the value of equity and what that means for their total compensation package. So they're going to get into the offer process with you. They're going to ask about strike price. They're going to ask about vesting schedules. And I'm seeing a trend now where candidates are asking that in the first round of interviews, as opposed to when they get the offer. So you've got to have a really strong communication plan and good narrative around that, or you'll start to lose US candidates. I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, but this is just a new trend for them. I'd also say that hiring happens much more quickly in the US, just because there's not an extended notice period. So you've got to be ready to move quickly when you like a candidate. It's likely that they have multiple offers going, which is where that negotiation piece comes back into play. But it also means that, you know, you have to make a quick decision, and that's hard when you're trying to pick the right candidate. So it's really about giving yourself the moment to have clarity as opposed to certainty, so that you can pull the trigger quicker.
Yeah, and Yoann, before we talk about your part on equity, because actually Kristin just introduced this in the panel now. But Kristin, yeah, now if we focus on key staff and really top execs, what are the best strategies?
I mean, I'm going to go back to a strong compensation strategy. And a compensation strategy isn't just around someone's base salary. It's the base, it's the equity, it's the benefit packages. And you also, I mean, if we're talking about, that's just the attraction part, right? When we're talking about retaining those key players, retaining the people who have all the historical knowledge, you have to add in things in a compensation strategy around promotional opportunity, career pathing, and equity refreshers. For instance, you know, you don't, I have seen over the course of my career, many employees not leave Spotify, previous companies, but leave because they weren't able to increase their equity. So here at Bodify, on your promotional track, we refresh your equity as you move up the ladder, as you continue your career with Bodify and continue investing in Bodify. We again invest back into you and make sure that you have that ownership stake within the business as well. So I think if you're attracting and retaining equity upfront and equity refreshers around that and strong compensation strategies so that you know that you're staying ahead of whatever the market trend is really, really important. And I think that you also have to remember to be creative and that you have to reevaluate these strategies often. The market shifts quickly in the US especially. And, you know, if you think back to a year ago, if you told me I would be doing things for virtual remote employees and in office employees, I would have told you were crazy, but here we are. So you have to shift this quickly, right? So, you know, what I'm saying today might not be applicable 6 months from now. So it's really important to make sure that you're keeping up with, you know, people, what employees are saying on LinkedIn, on Glassdoor, and making sure that you kind of have a pulse on what you need to do to shift if you need to shift.
Right. Well, Yoann, that leads to the topic. I know you're working with a lot of companies on equity strategies and stock options plans. So for you, what do you recommend? What are the best strategies? And also for you know, if we talk about the French tech America environment that we are talking to, probably to our auditors today, what would you tell them?
I mean, so obviously the strategies are different depending on each company, but most of the time you see different strategies depending on the size and the time of what are the timing of their scale up, what they raise, like 100 to 50 Series B, Series B, and so it would depend on their size and where they are going and the time frame of the scale up. But most of the time, what I see, especially for like when you start from scratch in the US, you know, usually you have a group outside the US that has really great incentive plans. That's what we call the qualified plans, where you have a lot of tax incentives in addition to the equity incentives. So the tax incentive is actually built into the equity incentives. You know, it's what we call the qualified plans. And so that's what you want to give your employees, because you don't want employees to have all those incentives, but then have a tax impact before they even sell the actual stocks. And so you want to be careful with that. And the best way to do it is that to understand that what are the tax incentives in France on the stocks on the French company, for example, if you have a group in France, will be different in the US. And so if you give equity incentives to like a French company to US employees, you need to make sure that they will keep the tax incentives that they have to those equity incentives in the US as well. And in order to do that, you know, you need to make sure before you actually go into the recruitment process that you develop sub plans of your equity incentive plans adapted to the US so that the tax incentives stays in the US and the employees, you know, they have something that's fully clear, that they know what it is, you know, and you don't give them just a plan in French that's translated into the in US, and they don't understand the terms and the technical stuff. It's too complex, and it does not give confidence if you want to recruit, at least on the second steps of the recruitment process. And so I think what's really important is to anticipate that, to have like your tax specialists in France and in the US to work on that before even you start even any recruitments, and to make sure our plans are tax incentive plans for the US employees, for the French employees, for the UK employees, for the employees all over the world. And so that's the first strategies we always recommend, is look at your legal documents and your equity incentive plans to make sure everything is compliant and it will be an incentive for everyone, and so that you can move forward on a global strategy as well, locally.
Yeah, and to understand the consequence would be, if not different treatment or for different type of subs, right?
Yeah, so you know, especially when you have the possibility to exercise your stocks, you know, if you keep the stock incentives that you have, for example, in France or Germany or UK, anywhere, outside of the US. You know, when the French employees, for example, who exercise the stocks, they are not going to be taxed until they actually sell the stocks, which might not be the case in the US if you don't do a US sub-plan into your global equity incentive plans. And so, you know, you can have French employees that don't have any tax impact when they exercise, and the US employees do. And so, you know, you can create conflicts even between, you know, executives between both countries, and you don't want that, you know. So it's something that's really important. It's never too early to look at that and implement that, even if you don't have any employees, because then you're going to have everything, you know, ready to recruit and move forward on that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can develop much more than, you know, when you become more global and bigger, you know, you have much more plans available in the US. And specifically, you have types of like the 401k plans. You have this type of plans for stock ownership and stock participation that will allow employees to actually buy stocks as they grew with the company, everything pre-tax. And so that, you know, they save a lot of money and they can capitalize on those pre-tax money within a plan. So it's like the equivalent of 401k plans for retirement, but for stocks. And usually that it's much more for like share performance stocks for all employees, and also specific key employee stock purchasing plans for like C-level executives. So when you start, you know, growing and making hundreds of millions of dollars in the US and you want to hiring those C-level executives, that's when then the second steps into your scale up, it will be to put in place all those plans.
Great. Anything you want to add, Kristin, on that, or any experience that you had on those stock options implementation?
I mean, I totally agree with Yoann, everything he says, because he is the expert. But I will, you know, I will add to that, you know, I have seen in previous companies where, you know, when you really start to add employees and, you know, think about how you can give them more options and different vesting schedules, it can, to Yohann's point, create a divide. So if you don't put a strategy in place up front, it's very clear and the expectations are set around that so that everyone understands it globally, I think it's a really big misstep, and one that I think is easy to fall into just because, you know, people don't necessarily know all of the ins and the outs of the different types of taxations and things like that.
Yeah. So if we are approaching our conclusion now, what if you want to summarize or focus on some ideas here, things that people would need to take away from this webinar, what would you tell them?
I think I would say to remember to, you know, think globally and act locally as you execute. And, you know, your talent management strategy can't be a set it and forget it strategy. You really have to make sure that you're reevaluating as market trends change so that you can be competitive, you know, in a very hot market.
Great. Yoann?
No, I mean, I totally agree with Kristin. I think she's the expert on talent recruiting and implementation and execution. So, but yeah, on my side, I'm more the tax guy. So I would say that it's never too early to anticipate all the tax issues related to any, you know, type of plans that you can have for employees in globally, you know, just not in the US or in France or in other country, much more globally, and make sure you as early as you can, you know, you contact the right people to actually put that in place locally in your country you're in.
Great. So I think we have finished our panel, right? So
it's always too fast.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So well, thank you very much, the two of you, and we keep in touch for I mean, this panel would be actually is recorded, so it would, yeah, maybe we have some questions. I'm looking at the Q&A and seeing if we have Yeah, we have some questions here from Alice. She's saying, 100% agree with Kristin. Don't come to US thinking you can get away with low salary benefit because you're a cool startup in France. First, you're not known in the US, so no brand attractiveness yet, and benchmark yourself. Well, she's kind of giving us some more.
Yeah, but I think she had a question about culture differences, and I think she's saying that she thinks it's not just about culture differences and also about human and values, global human and values. I think that's totally true. I think it's a little bit of both.
I agree.
Obviously, without human and values, you cannot develop a brand, and it's hard to recruit. I guess, Kristin, you can talk about that.
Yes.
I totally agree. This is so much more human than it's so much more personal now for people. I always say to candidates and to current employees, work has become so much of our lives. And so if we can't as a business be sensitive to that and make policies and procedures and processes around that, you really, you become very sort of sterile and not this place where people feel good about bringing their whole entire self to work.
Yes, I think that's a great that would be a great conclusion, because I don't have any more questions in there, unless you want to add something again, Yoann, or?
No, I think that sums it up.
Okay, well, thank you very much, the two of you, and I think this panel also would be broadcasted again, and people will be able to get in touch with you if they have more questions, right?
Great, absolutely. Anybody feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Great having you, Kristin. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you, French founders and French Tech America, for this opportunity and these great panels.
Absolutely.
Obviously, yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.